Welcome, and thanks for joining us this afternoon for the webinar. We'll give folks a few minutes to join. I am Mary Ebeling with the State Smart Transportation Initiative. And while we're waiting, I thought we could take care of a few housekeeping items. All attendees are muted right now, except for the panelists who will be presenting today. We will take questions at the end of the presentation, but you're able to submit your questions at any point by typing them into the question or chat window that you will see on the right-hand side of your screen. If for some reason you don't see the question box, click the orange arrow at the top right of your screen and it should appear. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on our website by the end of the day today or Friday morning, possibly Friday morning because it's later in the day today. Please visit ssti.us to access the recording of the webinar. Today's webinar, Massachusetts GreenDOT, Sustainability and Stewardship, will discuss the development and implementation of GreenDOT, MassDOT's policy framework for improving sustainability in its transportation sector. I won't go into any more detail here because I don't want to be a spoiler, but I will talk a bit about SSTI and introduce the presenters before we move on. I now have to move the slide. All right. So for those who aren't familiar with SSTI, I want to give just a brief overview. We're a network of reform-oriented state departments of transportation, founded in 2010 and housed at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We have about 20 states that partner with us. We operate in 3 ways, primarily. As a community of practice with the executive offices of the DOTs, where participating agencies are able to learn together and share experiences as they implement innovative smart transportation policies. As a source of direct technical assistance to agencies on transformative and replicable smart transportation reform efforts, and as a resource to the wider transportation community, including local, state, and federal agencies, in their efforts to reorient practice to changing social and financial demands. We invite everybody to take advantage of the resources on our website, ssti.us. Our presenters today are Ned Codd, the Assistant Secretary for GreenDOT, Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and Jeff Mullan, former Secretary and CEO, Massachusetts Department of Transportation. A little bit about, I was going to tell you a little bit about each of them before I forwarded the slide on and turned it over to Ned and Jeff. Ned is the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's Assistant Secretary for GreenDOT, MassDOT's comprehensive sustainability policy. As the GreenDOT Assistant Secretary, Ned is responsible for implementing policy initiatives and coordinating MassDOT's activities in pursuit of GreenDOT's 3 core goals: to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, promote healthy transportation modes of walking, bicycling, and public transit, and to support smart growth development. He works with all the divisions in MassDOT to ensure MassDOT is doing all they can to combat global warming, to improve resiliency in the face of climate change, and to promote public health through investments in healthy transportation infrastructure. Complete Streets project design and public education on getting healthy and where you're going is also part of this effort. Jeff Mullan from 2009 to September of 2011, Jeff Mullan served as the first Secretary and CEO of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation and the chair of Massachusetts Port Authority's Board of Directors. Prior to his appointment as Secretary, Jeff served as Undersecretary, General Counsel, and Chief Operating Officer of the Executive Office of Transportation, and later as Executive Director of the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority. He was a principal architect of the law to create the Department of Transportation, which we have today in Massachusetts. It's a merger of Commonwealth surface transportation agencies. And as the first leader of that new agency, Jeff was responsible for the implementation of the historic initiative that unified all of the surface transportation agencies in Massachusetts. As MassDOT Secretary, Jeff led the development and implementation of the GreenDOT program and policy, developing the broad vision that strives to have GreenDOT be a part of everything that Massachusetts DOT does. And on that note, I want to turn it over to our presenters. And then I'm going to give you control of the presentation now.
Okay, thanks very much, Mary, and thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon. I'm going to talk, give just a little bit of an introduction, and then turn it over to Jeff Mullan to talk about the policy context for the GreenDOT policy and the creation of the GreenDOT policy, and then I will come back to talk about the GreenDOT implementation plan that specified tasks and initiatives for realizing the GreenDOT policy's vision of integrating sustainability principles into all aspects of the way that we plan, design, build, and operate our state transportation system, and then give you an update on some of the status of some of the tasks and initiatives and the next steps, and then we will open it up for questions and discussion. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Thank you, Ned, and thank you for your leadership as Assistant Secretary for GreenDOT. I've been asked, and I want to also thank SSTI and all of you for joining us today. I appreciate being asked to be here. I believe I've been asked to be here to answer a question I get often, which is how did all of this start? I appreciate getting the question, and let me help frame this appropriately so that you can have an answer. The GreenDOT policy had a number of important precursors. I would say chief among them were the launch of the former Highway Department's Complete Streets policy, the Patrick administration's Leading by Example executive order in 2007, the passage in 2008 of the Commonwealth's Global Warming Solutions Act, and in 2009 the Transportation Reform Law and the Healthy Transportation Compact, which created MassDOT itself. That all led to the 2010 sustainability policy. I won't go so far as to say that without any of those, GreenDOT would not have happened, but they certainly all contributed to what ultimately became GreenDOT. So let me go through each of those initiatives and give you a little bit more background. In 2006, what was then known as the Massachusetts Highway Department published an update to its design manual, which is the reference document that all designers, project proponents, and Mass Highway staff themselves, and now, of course, MassDOT, use in designing and implementing roadway projects on the Commonwealth system of roadways or any roadway funded with federal or state money. With the 2006 Project Development and Design Guide, Mass Highway became one of the first state transportation agencies to adopt a complete streets design approach. Won national awards, and we were very proud of that process and that document, which called for the safe and convenient accommodation of all roadway users, not just drivers, but pedestrians, bicyclists, public transit riders on our roadways. The key theme, probably the key theme, was designing from the outside in, thinking about walking, biking, and waiting for buses at the very start of the design process rather than addressing their needs as an afterthought. So 2006 provided a key seed to what came later. 2006 was also the year that Governor Patrick was elected, and he came to office in January of 2007. On April 18th of 2007, the governor issued Executive Order 484, which was a leading by example order. That put a lot of pressure on us in transportation. It was a significant document given the significant scope and carbon footprint of the agencies that we were involved with at the then Executive Office of Transportation. Leading by example was designed to ensure that our activities and the investments that we were making were executed as sustainably as possible. It got us focused on energy consumption and building efficiency of our own facilities and operations. The way that Executive Order 484 works is it was led by state staff and other state agencies, the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, the State Building Authority, etc., and it called on all state agencies to meet targets for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and energy use. It called for the increase of more sustainable energy sources, more renewable electric generation and biofuels, and it called on us to build all state new buildings and major building rehabilitation projects to Massachusetts LEED Plus construction standards. The policy was supplemented in 2009 by another executive order, the Environmental Purchasing Policy, which extended leading by example principles further to procurement and product specification practices. The significance of the 2007 order at the end of the day for the then Executive Office of Transportation in the Massachusetts Highway Department was it got us all thinking about what more we can do to become a more sustainable organization internally. I would say of the three large precursors to MassDOT, that is the Leading by Example, the Global Warming Solutions Act, and the Reform Act, this next one is probably the most significant. I think it was the biggest impetus for what ultimately became GreenDOT. The Global Warming Solution Act required a 25% reduction in Massachusetts greenhouse gases below 1990 levels by 2020 and an 80% reduction by 2050. These were legally enforceable, economy-wide reductions. And given the transportation's critical role in there, we knew that we needed to do something. We had generated at that point, and I think we still do, more than 1/3 of the total greenhouse gas emissions produced in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. In 2009, we experienced the watershed year in surface transportation policy in the Commonwealth, and that we had a massive change process that had been initiated by the governor a couple of years earlier in talking about trying to work as one. That led to the passage of the Transportation Reform Law, which created MassDOT as a single unified surface transportation department. It combined the Massachusetts Highway Department, the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority, the MBTA, the Massachusetts Aeronautics Commission, the Registry of Motor Vehicles, and the regional transit authorities in one unified organization operated under a central board, although the regional transit authorities remain independent. That also came with a focus on safety and customer service. But the significance of it with respect to GreenDOT it was a change management process that had already been initiated. There were a lot of changes happening. GreenDOT was implemented within that spirit, with the background having been created by the Global Warming Solutions Act. The change management process of reform accelerated the change and really enabled us, in my opinion, to adopt the 2010 policy. The Transportation Reform Law also put public health at the core of our mission. When I say our mission, MassDOT's mission, through the Healthy Transportation Compact. That's an interagency body co-chaired by the Secretary of Transportation and the Secretary of Health and Human Services. It includes the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, the head of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation's Highway Division, the MBTA General Manager, and the Commissioner of Public Health. It's designed to encourage collaboration across agencies to ensure that public health is taken into account in transportation decision-making. There have been a number of programs that promote these goals, such as Mass in Motion and Safe Routes to School, but the Healthy Transportation Compact provided for enhanced cooperation between these organizations, and most importantly for MassDOT, it got us all further thinking about the connections between transportation and health. All of that was largely was the precursor to what ultimately became GreenDOT, and what was in my mind when I signed in 2010 the GreenDOT policy. All of the policies and all of the laws that came before it contributed to what ultimately became GreenDOT. It arose directly out of the development of the Clean Energy and Climate Plan for 2020, the Interagency Implementation Plan for the Global Warming Solutions Act. In addition to GreenDOT's role as MassDOT's contribution towards the Global Warming Solutions Act reduction goals in greenhouse gas, it grew into a very broadly based environmental sustainability policy. Its mission is not only to reduce greenhouse gases as required by the Global Warming Solution Act, but to promote public health through the Healthy Transportation Compact, and to make all of our business practices as environmentally sustainable as possible, in keeping with the Leading by Example policy. It was in this spirit that GreenDOT sought to embrace a vision of integrating sustainability into all aspects of MassDOT's responsibilities, from the way our customers use the system to the way we plan, design, and build it. We work to realize that vision through three central goals: reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector, promote healthy transportation modes of walking, bicycling, and public transit, and support smart growth. I signed the GreenDOT policy on June 2, 2010, just over 4 years ago. The day that I signed that, I saw it as an internally facing policy trying to help MassDOT get its own organization in order as we managed the Commonwealth, largely the Commonwealth's transportation network, and planned for its future. It has grown largely under the leadership of Governor Patrick, Secretary Davey, and Assistant Secretary Codd, and for those efforts, I commend them and thank them for moving the policy forward into the implementation stage, and I wish them all the luck in the world in moving it forward. Now, Ned, let's move the conversation ahead.
Great. Thanks very much, Jeff, and thanks, excuse me, thanks again for all your leadership on the policy. Now, after the GreenDOT policy was issued, MassDOT's Office of Transportation Planning led an effort to coordinate and engage across all of MassDOT to develop the specific tasks to be carried out in order to achieve the GreenDOT goals. This in-depth effort resulted in the publication of the GreenDOT implementation plan in December 2012. And the plan is guided by 16 goals across 7 themes shown here to develop a detailed action plan for MassDOT's activities. And the implementation plan includes several hundred specific objectives, initiatives, and targets to be pursued by MassDOT. And since the publication of the implementation plan, MassDOT's operating divisions, the Highway Division, the Rail and Transit Division, including the MBTA, Aeronautics Division, the Registry of Motor Vehicles, all our shared services units, from facilities and the motor pool through to our Information Technology Division, have been working to implement these tasks and to track their progress on them. And the following is a review of some of the key actions that MassDOT has taken toward the implementation of the GreenDOT policy. A central element of the GreenDOT policy and the implementation plan is the mode shift goal. In October 2012, MassDOT Secretary and CEO Richard Davey announced the mode shift goal of tripling the amount of travel by walking, biking, and riding public transportation between 2010 and 2030. This translates, based on our projections, we believe this translates roughly to holding automobile travel flat and satisfying the growth in travel demand through healthier travel modes. However, it represents a major challenge in terms of investment in facilities and system capacity, especially for the public transit system, as well as challenges in terms of education and customer choice. Reducing transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions is, as we know, generally dependent on 3 things: the efficiency of the vehicles, the carbon content of the fuel that the vehicles use, and the amount of travel by those vehicles. MassDOT really doesn't directly control any of these things, but there are things that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and other government institutions are doing to influence them. The efficiency of motor vehicle travel is governed by federal corporate average fuel efficiency, or CAFE standards, which have begun to rise significantly after decades of little or no change. These CAFE standards began to rise with the 2012 model year vehicles, and they will nearly double from 2010 levels by 2025. And this will have a significant benefit in terms of reducing transportation GHG emissions, and it should have a significant effect by 2020 as the consumer fleet begins to turn over. The carbon content of the vehicle fuel sources depends principally upon the suppliers of motor vehicles and fuels, as well as on customer choice and acceptance of lower emission vehicles. But greenhouse gas emissions in this area can be reduced through the promotion and acceptance of electric and other zero and partially zero emission vehicles, as I will discuss in a few minutes. However, the element of the transportation sector greenhouse gas emissions that MassDOT has the most influence over is vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, and travel behavior. By investing in facilities and infrastructure that support greater travel choice, in particular by healthy transportation modes, and by educating and encouraging travelers to make greener travel choices, we can facilitate reduced VMT. MassDOT is working to make this happen, and the current environment is providing us with some excellent opportunities in this area. As shown in this graph, after many decades of steady and significant increases, automobile travel dropped slightly during the Great Recession and has remained relatively flat since then, both in Massachusetts and nationwide. This offers the opportunity to begin to reduce VMT and therefore greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation sector. And MassDOT's support for the GreenDOT policy and for mode shift is reflected in MassDOT's long-range strategic planning and capital investment priorities. The 2009 Transportation Reform Law required MassDOT to periodically issue comprehensive state transportation plans. In January of 2014, MassDOT issued 2 documents that together satisfy these requirements. The We Move Massachusetts report is the strategic plan for the Commonwealth transportation system, which identifies key investment priorities, including a focus on investments that support the healthy transportation modes of walking, biking, and public transit, and it takes a performance-based approach to assessing the impacts of those investments. The We Move Massachusetts plan and process is also supported by MassDOT's Capital Investment Plan, which was also issued in January 2014 and which lists all of the projects that we plan to fund and build in the next 5 years using all of our anticipated funding sources, including federal, state, and toll revenues. These projects include significant investments in healthy transportation modes that support the GreenDOT policy. This includes investment in major public transit projects such as the Green Line extension, the South Coast Rail, commuter rail extension down to our important gateway cities of Fall River and New Bedford, South Station expansion to increase the number of tracks and the capacity of our biggest and most important transit facility in Boston and in New England, really. The Silver Line Gateway extension of our bus rapid transit line into Chelsea, which is another transit-dependent environmental justice community, and new replacement cars for the Red Line, Orange Line, and Green Line rapid transit lines. These transit investments will greatly increase the capacity of the MBTA transit system, which is essential to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and meeting the mode shift goal. A ride on the MBTA system saves an average of 12 pounds of carbon dioxide relative to the greenhouse gas emissions that would be produced by motor vehicles in the absence of the MBTA system. The capital investment plan also includes historic funding levels for pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, including $130 million over the next 5 years for shared use path construction, plus a recently announced additional $39 million in funding from MassDOT for the critical Somerville Community Path that runs along its companion Green Line Extension Transit project. This $160 $70 million or so is only for shared use path projects and does not include other significant expenditures on pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure that are included in our multimodal complete streets roadway project. And it's important that we begin to capture data on those expenditures as well in order to document and support MassDOT's efforts in building complete streets. This funding in the capital investment program for shared use path projects will help MassDOT to further completion of the Bay State Greenway, a network of regional bicycle routes across Massachusetts that was proposed in our 2008 State Bicycle Transportation Plan. This is a network of 7 corridors that serve all areas of the Commonwealth, including both off-road shared use paths and on-road bicycle routes. MassDOT is working to build out the network's proposed off-road shared use path network because these paths are more attractive to all users, including the younger and older walkers and bikers, as well as novice bikers. The implementation of these paths is also focused on facilities like the Somerville Community Path that serve dense urban areas and clusters of residential and commercial land uses, which will enable us to maximize the transportation utility of these investments and to support the mode shift and greenhouse gas reduction goals that can be supported by a robust shared use path network. MassDOT is not just relying on a build it and they will come approach to use of these healthy transportation modes. MassDOT actively promotes travel choice and mode shift through a combination of education and encouragement efforts. Through MassRides, our statewide travel options program, we work with about 325 major employers across the state, employers that have about 465,000 employees. MassRides provides them with online trip planning and ride matching tools such as the New Ride System, which is an online trip planning and ride matching service, and support through such offerings as an emergency ride home service for employees who leave their cars at home and then experience a personal emergency. MassDOT also supports and coordinates with the state's 11 Transportation Management Associations, or TMAs. These TMAs, which work with about 350 more companies that have about 300,000 additional employees, also share in the New Ride System and provide similar program offerings in more focused and typically urban geographic areas. In 2013, Massachusetts commuters that work at the businesses served by MassRides and our partner TMAs reduced nearly 12,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions from entering our air by carpooling, vanpooling, biking, walking, and taking transit. And MassRides also delivers our Safe Routes to School program, which provides in-school education and encouragement to promote healthy travel to school. Through this program, we reach 625 partner schools with almost 300,000 students in 171 communities. This is about 42% of the students, the elementary and middle school students in Massachusetts, which is more than twice the national average of 19% served by state Safe Routes to School programs. MassDOT is also working to ensure that the way we deliver our services is as environmentally sustainable as possible, from the way that we operate our roadways and transit fleet to the way that we run our facilities. In particular, MassDOT is taking advantage of advanced technology to improve system operations and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. MassDOT has launched the all-electronic tolling project, which will eliminate all toll booths and replace them with overhead gantries that can read each vehicle's transponder. And for vehicles that do not have a transponder, the gantries can read the vehicle's license plate and send the owner a bill, including a fee for the service of sending out the bill. This will enable significant reductions in congestion and greenhouse gas emissions due to the elimination of toll booths and manual toll operations. This system is currently being tested on the Tobin Bridge between Chelsea and Boston, and we expect it to be in place statewide by 2017. MassDOT is also expanding our GoTime real-time traveler information system, which uses Bluetooth signals from driver mobile phones to provide information on expected travel times to key destinations on variable message signs along major highways. It can also provide information on greener travel alternatives, like when the next commuter rail train is leaving for Boston. At the same time, MassDOT is working to facilitate a shift toward electrification of the transportation sector and promotion of zero-emission vehicles. This is essential. It will help us to reach our Global Warming Solutions Act of a 25% greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2020, but it's absolutely essential for reaching the 2050 goal of an 80% greenhouse gas reduction. In keeping with these goals, Massachusetts is part of an 8-state consortium that has entered into a memorandum of understanding which sets a target of getting 3.3 million zero-emission vehicles on the road by 2025, including Massachusetts' share of 300,000 ZEV vehicles. The MBTA has installed 28 Level 2 charging stations at some of its park and ride lots and 10 more for its non-revenue fleet. And the MassDOT Highway Division is working with the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs to identify an initial 15 EV charging stations across the state. MassDOT is also coordinating with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs on electric vehicle incentive programs, including the Massachusetts Electric Vehicle Incentive Program, which provides funding to municipalities, public universities, and state agencies for electric vehicle purchases and charging stations. And the Department of Energy Resources is also getting set to launch the Massachusetts Offers Rebates for Electric Vehicles program, which provides direct consumer rebates for purchase of qualifying vehicles. And these incentives are funded by proceeds from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiatives, or RGGI, auctions of greenhouse gas emissions credits. And MassDOT will be studying the future potential for ZEVs and how we can support those through incentives and infrastructure investment. Whoa. Oh, sorry. Okay, there we are. MassDOT is also focusing on improving the energy efficiency of our operations. MBTA lighting and mechanical energy retrofits have saved 19.7 kilowatt hours, 7.8 million pounds of carbon dioxide, and $4.1 million since 2010. The MBTA is currently pursuing the third rail efficiency project, which will significantly reduce power consumption for heating the third rail, which is necessary during snowy and icy weather, but is not needed all the time and can be managed through better heaters and sensing technology. The Aeronautics Division is working with Nantucket Airport and the USDOT's Volpe Center to rehabilitate the facility as a carbon-neutral airport on Nantucket. And the Highway Division is working with other state agencies on the Accelerated Energy Program to audit facilities and identify retrofit opportunities. The Highway Division is also testing out LED lighting technologies in our Central Artery Tunnel project. MassDOT is also aggressively pursuing the generation and use of renewable energy. In December of 2013, MBTA opened the rehabilitated Orient Heights Station, which included 100 kilowatt of solar photovoltaics on station canopies. The MBTA is also pursuing 2 other solar photovoltaic installations of 2.3 megawatts at one of our rail yards and a 230 kilowatt hour garage rooftop array at the Wonderland parking garage. The Aeronautics Division is working with Barnstable Airport to install a nearly 7 megawatt solar array on the airport property, while the Highway Division has completed a 700 kilowatt solar array along I-91 in Hatfield. My apologies, having a little, there we go. MassDOT is also working to ensure that all of our project development and design activities support sustainability, environmental protection, and mode shift. The Healthy Transportation Policy Directive, which was signed by the heads of all of MassDOT's operating divisions, requires that all MassDOT projects, road and transit, serve all travel modes. All of MassDOT funded or designed projects should promote healthy transportation modes of walking, biking, and public transit, and projects that don't meet these standards require the Secretary's approval. MassDOT is also integrating key GreenDOT objectives and principles into all of our planning activities, including our regional planning and project selection processes in partnerships with the state's MPOs, into our development review, access permit, and transportation mitigation process, and into our long-range transportation studies. This includes integrating public health and health impact assessments as part of transportation corridor studies. These are a provision, these HIAs are a provision of the 2009 Transportation Reform Law, and in order to address this provision, MassDOT held training on HIAs for our staff and for consultant staff, and we piloted an HIA for a transportation corridor study of an old 1950s era elevated highway in Somerville, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. This HIA determined that the facilities, that the alternatives that we were investigating all improved public health through air quality improvements and improved access to recreational opportunities, and we are pursuing an at-grade solution that will better support neighborhood livability and public health. MassDOT's construction practices are also being reviewed to promote sustainability, and with that, warm mix asphalt has replaced hot mix asphalt as the standard state specification on pavement jobs. It reduces fuel consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, and traffic delays. In 2013, 68% of the 891,000 tons of asphalt that we placed on MassDOT jobs was warm mix asphalt. Even as we work to minimize greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, we also need to prepare for the effects of climate change that are already an inevitable result of the greenhouse gas emissions that have occurred and will continue for some time. The MassDOT Highway Division is working on a climate change adaptation plan in downtown Boston with a focus on potential impacts to the tunnel system. This study makes use of Monte Carlo simulations of different potential storm scenarios and identifies ways to manage the risks. MassDOT Planning is also preparing to undertake a statewide climate change vulnerability assessment to identify adaptation strategies to increase resiliency system-wide. This effort will include coastal storm evaluation as well as inland stormwater runoff and flooding issues. At the same time, the MBTA is pursuing additional federal climate change adaptation funding to map and conduct more detailed risk assessments of its own infrastructure. Now, as we move forward with further implementation of the GreenDOT policy, we are very focused on continuing to integrate the GreenDOT goals into MassDOT's core practices. We're focused on in-depth coordination with MassDOT divisions on GreenDOT tasks and implementation. In particular, we're working to identify existing data collection and performance management practices that we can use to track GreenDOT progress and to develop a clear and concise way of reporting on GreenDOT status and performance. We will be tracking efforts of the MassDOT divisions and developing ways of measuring these in terms of some key bottom line performance measures such as greenhouse gas emissions impacts, mode shift, and measures of safety, health, and quality of life. We're engaging with a robust external advisory group and also working with other state agencies on overall Global Warming Solutions Act implementation. We also welcome opportunities like this to share our experiences with other agencies and practitioners across the country, to hear about ideas and best practices from other jurisdictions, and to help facilitate a national dialogue about sustainability in the transportation sector. Thank you for your attention, and we would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, both Ned and Jeff, for this really super interesting presentation. I hope it was helpful to folks on the webinar. I know I'm really interested in what's happening in Massachusetts. I'm kind of buying listeners the time to type in their questions right now. So while people are typing in their questions, if you haven't already, I just want to remind everybody that there will be a recording of the webinar, and slides will be up on the SSTI website, likely today, but certainly by tomorrow. And while you're visiting our website, I invite you to sign up for our SSTI newsletter. It comes out every 2 weeks. That will have information on upcoming webinars. We have 2 of them coming up, in fact. We have one on July 22nd, 2:30 Eastern, 1:30 Central Time. SSTI Executive Committee member and former PennDOT Secretary Al Beeler will be a panelist on a webinar offered by the National Highway Institute focusing on livability and level of service, making the connection. Also in July, SSTI will offer their own webinar on a similar topic featuring new legislation coming out of California and new rules that were recently released. Again, we don't have a date or time for that yet in July, but if you visit the SSTI website, you will be able to get that information. And now, I think, do we have questions? My coworker Robbie is going to handle the questions.
Yes, and again, if you don't see where you need to type in the question, there should be a question box at the bottom of your panel on the right side. You may need to click the little orange arrow in the upper right-hand corner to access that. This is actually a pretty broad-ranging overview question, but I think it's a good one, and either Jeff or Ned could probably take this. Could you speak a little bit about what elements were necessary, absolutely critical, to bring about the changes in orientation within the DOT itself? And he goes on to ask, how much was top-down direction, in other words, from the governor's office? What about legislative buy-in, executive leadership within the DOT? You know, how much were those important? And finally, was there internal resistance from DOT staff or management? Was there high turnover in response to this? That sort of thing. I think that's an interesting set of questions.
So this is Jeff Mullan. So I'm smiling. You can't see me because we're on a webinar, but I'm smiling because that's a whole nother webinar, really about the, you know, why do we have MassDOT? And let me try to take it in order. I would say the ingredients for change that enabled and unlocked a lot of what Ned went through in the detail as manifest in the 2010 policy. While they started with the Global Warming Solutions Act, we would not have been possible to move in this direction without the 2009 reform. In other words, put another way, there's a whole nother set of things that is happening here in Massachusetts that began really shortly after Governor Patrick was elected, with the discussion about creating one unified transportation organization and stopping thinking about jurisdictional issues and really thinking about moving people and goods from point A to point B, that led to the creation of MassDOT, which created the change management environment into which GreenDOT has operated. So I'm hoping that that's clear, but certainly that was the environment that that we were operating in from the period, I'd say, from about 2007 to when I left in 2011. And I think that continues today. Now, you asked about bottom-up versus top-down. It's a little of both. I would say that without the bottom-up, it really doesn't work well. I learned in the process that the employees of the MBTA and the Highway Department don't really fear change. They fear the unknown that comes with change. So we got most of our good ideas from the trenches, I think, because those are the people who are closest to it. So one of the things that I really worked hard on doing was opening up communications and implementing things like weekly letters from me, or email, actually letters from me to the employees, to just let people know what was going on. That was a huge takeaway for me about change management. I also worked with some folks at Harvard about change processes that just happen in regular corporations, and studied what happened at Ford Motor Company and a couple of other places, thinking that the change issues are really common to both the public and private sector, and I think that's proven to be true. It's all a long way of saying there were things happening in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that enabled us to unlock what ultimately became GreenDOT. It wasn't any one thing. It was a combination of factors. I'm glad they happened, and I think we're the better for it. But it's a constant work in progress, I will say. So I hope that's been responsive.
That's great. Thank you. Jeff, you stated that the greenhouse gas reduction goal requirements were legally enforceable. How are these enforced?
Well, there have been some regulations that have been put in place that address sort of specific emitters, including power plants, and there are beyond that. It remains to be seen whether we have additional regulations that are put in place, or whether we see what happens when we get to 2020, and whether we have made the 25% reduction, or whether we have not made the 25% reduction. You know, I'm sure that there will be a large conversation come 2019, 2020, and 2021 about we have a lot of inventory and tracking processes that are in place that we continue to hone and develop, and I think that there are going to be a lot of discussions about, did we make it? Is there consensus on the fact whether we made it? And if we didn't make it, what do we need to do to mitigate any shortfall?
Okay, great. We also have a question. I think somebody's seeking information for their state. And he asks, one of the goals of GreenDOT policy was to promote healthy transportation modes. Do you feel that Mass Rides was or is your most effective program to this end, or are there other programs that you would suggest? He says that his state is dipping their toe into TDM, and he was curious about your feelings of the effectiveness of such a program.
I think that Mass Rides is a very effective program. It is principally focused on the work site and commuter behavior, and that's travel behavior that does have a big impact. It's certainly not the majority of travel, but it is travel that contributes to some of our worst congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. I would say look to mass rides as a good example of travel demand management on a statewide level, as well as the way that we have partnered with established transportation management associations to coordinate our activities and try to get some economies of scale and some mutually supportive activities, across borders of TMAs and ways that we can coordinate our actions. And now I'm going to hand it off to Jeff.
Let me just add to that. When we first adopted MassDOT, you talk about mass rides, and I referred to in my remarks that it was internally focused, and by that I meant coming out of the leading by example executive order, we were focused, and I was focused on getting our own agencies' act in order. So I was thinking about things like warm mix asphalt, for example, and retrofitting diesel, and having our contractors respect these policies in the complete streets. I think what we've subsequently learned after the adoption of the policy, that another way to look at this and to really grow the policy is to turn it around and really focus on MassDOT's policy role in trying to drive the largest reduction in greenhouse gas, and that's why MassDOT has begun to focus on the mode shift and the control of EMT and things like that. So big picture, I would say while mass rides is part of the solution and starts to get us there, I think the biggest bang from these GreenDOT policies as they've been implemented are going to be from our mode shift objectives and just getting fewer people in cars and more people on high occupancy vehicles and mass transportation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. We do also have one question here about traffic signals, and they wanted to know what changes to signal control are engendered by GreenDOT. How much of the modal switch does MassDOT hope to achieve through upgrades to signal control? What changes do you propose to implement to achieve this? I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what the signal controls, whether that's going to change mode shift, but maybe there's something internal that I'm missing here.
Well, a few things about our signal control and signal equipment practices. First, we as the state DOT only control a minority of traffic signals across Massachusetts. Most are under local control. However, we have, even prior to GreenDOT, we have been implementing sustainable-oriented practices, low energy consumption LED signals. I believe that virtually all of our signals, if not all, are now LED signals. We have pedestrian countdown signals at most of our traffic signals. We have up-to-date traffic signal controllers that can accommodate all different types of signal phasing plans, provide good pedestrian access, and as we do intersection projects, just like with our other roadway projects, we have been adhering to complete streets design standards and good good intersection design standards to ensure safe and attractive accommodation of all modes. We recently adopted the National Association of City Transportation Officials, or NACDO, Urban Street Design Guide, which provides a great deal of flexibility and room for our designers to look for creative solutions for urban intersections and roadways, ways that will safely and comfortably accommodate all roadway users, including pedestrians and bicyclists, public transit riders, as well as vulnerable users.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any further questions from the audience. If anybody has any further questions, please do type them in now. And I'm going to let Mary wrap up, and she's just got some further housekeeping things here.
All right, so I'm back online. I just wanted to thank everybody, the presenters, Ned and Jeff, as well as the attendees listening in today on our excellent webinar. I also want to once again invite you to visit our website, ssti.us, where you can sign up for our newsletter, find out about upcoming webinars, or follow us on Twitter. And thanks so much for attending today, and we hope to see you again soon at another webinar.